Welcome back to Dirty 20, everybody. Today we're starting on a new series of getting into character by looking at backgrounds. Let's get on with the show. So, maybe you've played a one-shot, you've had a game of two of D&D, and you've played with characters that your DM has given you, but you've enjoyed it, you have a handle on the way the game is played, combat, statistics, all that kind of stuff, but now it's time to make your own character. Now, we've talked about the ins and outs of rolling for statistics and different ways that you can go about it. But there's one area which personally I always struggle with, and that is getting into the character. One of the things that is put into place in the player's handbook and throughout the game is little things and ways that you can kind of create your character, your personality through the choices that you make. And one of the big ones in that is background. Today we're going to look at a background and we're going to discuss how the different elements of it impact on your character. On page 125 of the Player's Handbook, you have the section on backgrounds. And we'll just read a little bit of it to get an idea what it's all about. Every story has a beginning. Your character's background reveals where you came from, how you became an adventurer, and your place in the world. Your fighter might have been a courageous knight or a grizzled soldier. Your wizard could have been a sage or an artisan. Your rogue might have gotten by as a guild thief or commanded audiences as a jester. Choosing a background provides you with important story cues about your character's identity. The most important question to ask about your background is, what changed? Why did you stop doing whatever your background describes and start adventuring? Where did you get the money to purchase your starting gear? Or if you come from a wealthy background, why don't you have more money? How did you learn the skills of your class? What sets you apart from ordinary people who share your background? So here they're trying to tell you that this is going to have a massive impact on who your character is and how they act. And they give you lots of example backgrounds in the Player's Handbook. There's more in Xanathar's Guide and dotted around in different books as well. But one very important thing to remember is that you can create a custom background. Let's have a quick look at that. Customizing a background. You might want to tweak some of the features of a background so it better fits your character or the campaign setting. To customize a background, you can replace one feature with any other one, choose any two skills, and choose a total of 2 tool proficiencies or languages from the sample backgrounds. Now then, this is very important, and it's something that I haven't really gotten to grips with myself yet in terms of creating a custom background. And we'll look at some of the reasons why in just a second when we look at an example. But again, what is important to remember is that you are not bound by the backgrounds that are in the books. If something doesn't quite mesh with your idea of your character, it's okay to go in and tweak things and change things a little bit. So, the most recent character that I created is named Hephaestus. He is a Dragonborn artificer with the Acolyte background, and we're going to look at that background in just a second. But I felt that that background fitted in very nicely with what I was trying to build of Hephaestus. So he is very similar in terms of his backstory to Arminius, the main character in the Netflix Barbarian series, and also a real person in history. He was given to a Temple of Gond as a kind of hostage, because his clan of Dragonborn were unruly, and the temple that controlled this land wanted to keep them under control, so they took several of the children as hostages, and he grew up in the Temple of Gond. So he grew up as an acolyte, as opposed to the kind of fearsome warrior barbarian kind of style that most of his people come from. And that's where he learnt his artificer skills and so on and so forth. But I felt the acolyte meshed quite well with what I was looking for. So let's have a look at it. So on page 126 of the Player's Handbook, you have the acolyte background, and you can first see a bit of fluff at the beginning. You have spent your life in the service of a temple to a specific god or pantheon of gods. You act as an intermediary between the realm of the holy and the mortal world, performing sacred rites and offering sacrifices in order to conduct worshippers into the presence of the divine. You are not necessarily a cleric. Performing sacred rites is not the same thing as channeling divine power. Choose a god, a pantheon of gods, or some other quasi-divine being from among those listed in Appendix B, or those specified by your DM, and work with your DM to detail the nature of your religious service. Were you a lesser functionary in a temple, raised from childhood to assist the priests in the sacred rites, or were you a high priest who suddenly experienced a call to serve your god in a different way? Perhaps you were the leader of a small cult outside of an established temple structure, or even an occult group that served a fiendish master that you now deny. Then, just below that, you have the kind of more crunchy stuff. Skill proficiencies, insight and religion, languages, 2 of your choice, and some equipment. Now, again, skills, this is part of the crunchy stuff that you're probably quite familiar with. When you do skill checks, means you're good at them. Languages is something which I find is very, very underused, particularly because, I don't know, most of the time it's very difficult to have, first of all, remember all the languages that your players speak. Unless it's a very specific moment where they find like a scroll or something like that. But it does speak towards the kind of level of intelligence that your character might have, because, or how much they've traveled, right? And so that gives you an idea of their kind of personality. Now, feature is next, and the feature is the one area that I've always struggled with when it came to creating my own background, because it's quite specific, but then also not game-breaking, and that has to be a discussion between you and your dungeon master. Let's have a read of the Acolyte feature, and you'll see what I mean. Feature, Shelter of the Faithful. As an acolyte, you command the respect of those who share your faith, and you can perform the religious ceremonies of your deity. You and your adventuring companions can expect to receive free healing and care at a temple, shrine, or other established presence of your faith, though you must provide any material components needed for spells. Those who share your religion will support you, but only you at a modest lifestyle. You might also have ties to a specific temple dedicated to your chosen deity or pantheon, and you have a residence there. This could be the temple where you used to serve, if you remain on good terms with it, or a temple where you have found a new home. While near your temple, you can call upon the priests for assistance, provided the assistance you ask for is not hazardous and you remain in good standing with your temple. Now, again, this has some very real in-game applications, whether it's your lifestyle, how you live, and you know, meaning that you don't have to spend your gold on basic living, but also getting support from people. And that's often kind of a feature. I remember the folk hero, for example, has a feature where you know, the common folk will help you out because you've done something heroic and they've heard of you and they like you in that sense. So coming up with this kind of feature is, from my perspective, always the tricky one. There's nothing wrong with looking at the different backgrounds and maybe finding a feature that you like, that fits, and then applying it with a tweak or two. I think that's a really great idea. Now, characteristics. We're going to do a whole video on characteristics, but I just wanted to touch on it on this background because in the player's handbook, when you look at a background, it gives you some tables of suggested characteristics, and those are personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. They tend to be kind of grouped in the alignment sense. Again, we're going to be doing a video about that. So there's lawful, there's neutral, there's chaotic, then there's also good and evil ones, and also just by your class maybe. But I really take these with a grain of salt. I'm just going to read the section where it talks about the characteristics, and we'll discuss. Acolytes are shaped by their experiences in temples or other religious communities. Their study of the history and tenets of their faith and their relationships to temples, shrines, or hierarchies affect their mannerisms and ideals. Their flaws might be some hidden hypocrisy or heretical idea, or an ideal or bond taken to an extreme. Okay, so I did not focus on this list. There are some other lists, and again, we're going to discuss this further in the video on characteristics. But for my Dragonborn, Hephaestus, I had the idea that he was taken by this temple, taught all these skills, he excelled, and then he was asked to either suppress or attack or defeat his own tribe, and he refused to do that, burning down the temple library. And if you know anything about Gond in the Forgotten Realms, you know that he's all about knowledge and stuff like that, so this is a really big deal. So he burnt down the temple library, and he ran away. And he's now hiding from his adopted father, who is not the kindest man. And he thinks that, you know, the Temple of Gond are out to get him. So his relationship with his temple is not as tight as, you know, the Acolyte background kind of suggests, but with regards to his characteristics and his bonds and his ideals and his flaws, I definitely had to take that into consideration. We will be putting up the character sheet for Hephaestus on www.lavictoriaproductions.com. Please head on over and check him out. Tell me what you think of him, and any suggestions that you might have for what I'm trying to achieve with the character, which we will be discussing as we go with this getting into character series. And, you know, tell me what you think about backgrounds. Have you had much luck kind of creating your own, particularly with the features? I'd love to hear suggestions as to how you might go about that. And do you think that there are any backgrounds that are kind of just better than all the others, or do you think that they're, you know, pretty well balanced? Thank you so much for watching. As always, like, subscribe, and keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J. Shiro. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.